Hello, everyone. It's Alysia Silberg, founder of the Global Fireside Chat and general partner at Street Global. I'm excited to be joined by Christian Meyers, my business partner in Street Global, for this edition of weekly Entrepreneur Wednesday's Fireside Chat. Happy Valentine's Wednesday, and welcome to our 2018 look at new technologies driving innovation. In this Fireside Chat, we'll look at data and how big data sets and new tools for using them are transforming industries and creating opportunities for entrepreneurs and investors. I'm proud to say that I'm a statistician and data scientist, and I love this topic. Data science is a field where researchers have worked for decades to build foundations. Now, because of networks, very large data sets, and other new resources, businesses and governments are quickening the pace of innovation and increasingly using data to improve industries and processes. The level of participation has grown tremendously among entrepreneurs and investors. That's what we're exploring today. What's happening, the opportunities, trends, organizations, issues, and ideas at play in this great opportunity that's affecting us all. I'm broadcasting from San Francisco, a place where I meet many entrepreneurs working to both build important data sets and apply them to opportunities in life sciences, transportation, finance, and other industries. I'm very inspired by their example and hope this show furthers their efforts. On that note, I'm very grateful to be joined by some incredibly special entrepreneurs, investors, researchers, thought leaders, and organizational leaders working in financial markets, media, government, corporate development, investing, and entrepreneurship who are taking their valuable time to share their incredible insights so we can learn from them. For those of you who don't know, our topic for today is data and new tools, how data and our tools for applying it are creating opportunity and changing our lives. Now I've got your intro speak. Let me go ahead and introduce you to our VIP guests before asking them to properly introduce themselves to you. Welcome to Trisha Singhal, who's a data and machine learning researcher based out of India. Welcome to Dr. Satya Hedge, who's a pediatric pulmonologist and healthcare innovator. Welcome to Derek Lunston, who's an entrepreneur advisor based out of Pennsylvania, USA. Welcome to Belle Silberg, who is a chemist and animal nutritionist, also based out of the US. Welcome to California-based Mark Kapczynski, who's a business strategist and venture capitalist. Welcome to Ontario, Canada-based Adam Dick, who's a nanotechnology expert and entrepreneur. And welcome to Sunny Jain, who's a cell biologist and entrepreneur based out of California. Now let's ask our VIP guests to properly introduce themselves to, starting with Trisha. Please go ahead.
Hello everyone, I'm Trisha Singhal, pursuing engineering in computer sciences in India. As a student majoring in computer science and engineering, I was fortunate enough to be an active researcher in the fields of data science and machine learning for the past 10 months. While working in this field, I always wanted to create or do something that will affect everyone's life, and I found machine learning quite fascinating as it can solve the real world problems with the higher level of understanding and intelligence. I believe it is the appropriate time for exploring the ways new data sets, new techniques, and new scientists could be deployed to make the world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Trisha. I love having inspiring women in data joining us, so welcome.
Thank you.
Satya, please say hi to everyone.
Yes. Hello, this is Satya Hegde. I'm a physician, a pediatric pulmonologist during my day profession. I work for University of Chicago. I'm a healthcare innovator, educator, and a researcher. I have an interest in data science, although I'm not a data scientist per se. I have a startup called Virtual Medical Assistant, or VMA, which is helping physicians to deal with the pain points of electronic health records. I collaborate with smart guys like you all here to transform the healthcare using the data-driven technology to save lives.
Welcome, Satya. Very excited to have you join us. Derek, please say hi to everyone.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Derek Lunston. I'm the CEO of a company called Scrimmage. We're a mobile training education company. We use data to help personalize the experience for how learners absorb their content for various purposes. We track a lot of data on how content's being used and accessed. I'm also an advisor for different startup companies, including on the board of directors of a company called Life Guides, where we're doing peer-to-peer matching using data and AI, as well as intelligence assistance, matching styles, different things of how people are learning and experiencing their life. So excited to be here with all of you today.
Welcome, Derek. Bo, please say hi to everyone.
Hello, folks. This is Bill. And I'm a research scientist, PhD chemistry, and we focus on developing probiotics to replace antibiotics in livestock worldwide, and enzymes to replace hormones to make livestock healthier for human consumption.
Welcome, Bill. Mark, please say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Kapczynski, based here in Santa Monica, California. My background stems in the data space from having worked at some large data aggregators, including Experian. And I have a personal fascination, along with others on the call, around how big data in the consumer healthcare arena can become, as we say, more liquid or more accessible to all, and all the benefits that come from that. So thanks for having me. I also help manage UCLA's venture capital fund.
Welcome. Adam, please say hi.
Okay, hello. My name is Adam Dick, and I'm the founder and CEO of Anaxium Research, a company which is experimenting with putting carbon nanotubes and other types of nanoparticles into concrete to improve its properties. And we hope to change the way structures are built and to improve their longevity. And I'm here today to lend my insights to the world of big data. So thank you for having me.
Welcome, Adam. Sunny, please say hi to everyone.
Hello, Fireside Chat community and beyond. My name is Sunny Jain. I'm CEO and founder of Sun Genomics. We are a microbiome health company creating precision probiotics. And basically that means we're taking gut samples and analyzing all the microbes and custom formulating probiotics based off of your unique profile. We have a specific interest in data science in that we're generating terabytes of data monthly here and trying to figure out ways to condense this information to a consumer deliverable.
Welcome, Sunny. And Christian, say hi to everyone.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Fireside Chat community, and thank you, Alysia. I'm San Francisco-based Christian Meyers. I'm a seed stage technology investor and investing partner of Alysia's. We invest in companies that are addressing some of the world's biggest challenges, such as increasing financial inclusion and increasing health and well-being. And many of those companies are using data to figure out how to deliver better products and how to help their customers. And I'm very excited about this particular opportunity and discussion. Thank you.
Welcome back, Christian. Just before we jump into our questions, a few shout outs. On the screen are contact details for our VIPs. Always feel free to reach out to them. Don't forget to keep sending your questions through to inspireme@onlinefiresidechat.com. We'll do our very best to always have them answered. Just a reminder, we have community champions and ever-growing meetup groups in over 60 countries around the globe. On that note, thank you to all our volunteer champions from around the globe. You are the heart of our community, and we wouldn't be here today without you. Over the next few months, with all your help, we'll be sharing with and inspiring entrepreneurs in more than 100 countries. Thank you again to our growing family of supporters and collaborators from around the developing world, who are once again hosting sessions for hundreds of entrepreneurs who don't have access to the necessary bandwidth or understanding of the English language to join our sessions on their own. Thank you to the government ministries, UN offices, US Embassy Corners, World Economic Forum, British Council offices, university campus, schools, business incubators, Chamber of Commerce's, community entities, and radio stations for all your weekly hosting support and for raising awareness within your regions and communities. Of course, thank you to everyone from You and Woman for your support as well. We once again stream you across new live platforms today. If you'd like us to share with and inspire entrepreneurs in your community, make sure to tell us so we can broadcast from a radio station near you. Now you want to learn from the best, and they are here. So the topic for today, as you know, is data and new tools, how data and our tools for applying it are creating opportunities and changing lives. To make our VIPs feel super comfortable, we're going to ask a question of one of you. It, of course, goes to all of you. Please sit back, relax, and give us your honest opinions. No answer is wrong. We want to learn from you, and we want to hear the truth. So VIPs, make yourselves comfortable. First question goes to Adam. Adam, here goes.
First on the hot seat.
There you go. Okay. Adam, let's set the stage with some foundational concepts about data and business. Please, could you tell us what is big data and what's different about it in terms of the journey we've all taken when it comes to this concept of big data? Please go ahead.
Okay, well, I guess my own personal definition would be that big data is data of such great quantity that it actually allows us to make qualitative judgments, which is not something that we had previously. For instance, if one were to sum over the aggregate of all purchases people make in a grocery store, it could give us an idea about the average state of health and fitness in a particular geographical area. And I think whereas before we were limited by both data storage capacity and processing capacity, and this forced us into making judgments which were more limited in scope and more directly quantitative, like say average GPAs in a school district or average heights and weights of, say, soldiers in the military. It's still useful information to have, but it probably won't give you the deep insights like big data can that we can get today.
Thank you, Adam. Trisha, do you have anything you'd like to add in terms of what Adam was saying?
Yeah. In simplest words, I can say that the raw information can be termed as data, and the voluminous amount of data is what we call as big data. And there are numerous differences between big data and traditional data. Apart from larger volume, higher velocity, higher degree of uncertainty, big data uses the distributed database as compared to the centralized database used by the traditional data. Also, data has become more semi-structured and unstructured now, which leads to a greater variety. I think that's all I want to add.
Thank you so much, Trisha. Very interesting insights being shared today. This next question goes to you, Satya, and we'd also love to hear from Derek. Satya, data analysis has advanced for decades. In your opinion, what ingredients make big data ready for use today? Please just keep your answer super simple. We have people from around the world listening. Please go ahead, Satya.
Yes, thank you. So in healthcare, we have a large amount of unstructured free text data written by doctors called progress notes. So if we can have a way to meaningfully extract this free structure data of progress notes using natural language processing, it could be very powerful in predicting health outcomes.
Thank you so much, Satya. Derek, what thoughts could you share here? Please go ahead.
I just think that the biggest opportunity now that you're finding with big data is that industries and companies that historically had not been users of data are now able to access data and make them efficient to their business impact. You know, transportation as an example, autonomous vehicles, Internet of Things, healthcare, as Satya mentioned, education. I think the point that was mentioned earlier around qualitative evaluation, you're seeing business uses and business cases and business models evolving that never existed before due to the fact that we can now harvest this data and do it both at a macro and a micro level. And that combination of very, very minute data points compared with a large volume just makes it really fascinating. And I think we'll talk more about some of the specific uses. But I mean, even, you know, I know we're going to talk about blockchain, but I mean, that's another one that has just recently existed. There's so many.
Thank you, Derek. We're definitely coming to blockchain shortly. Moving on, Sunny, we'd love to hear from you here. Bo, also, we'd love to hear from you. Sunny, I know you're working on some very interesting stuff. Can you share some examples of some important data sets that haven't existed until recently? Please go ahead, Sunny.
Sure. We recently, in 2012 and then 2014, began to sequence our microbiomes, which means we would sequence the gut material living inside our bodies, and we found that there are hundreds of trillions of microorganisms inside our bodies. So when we sequence that at the DNA level, we found that there's 100-fold more genes in the microbial population in our bodies than our own human genes. And so when we started in human genome sequencing, we thought we had this challenge of data sequencing analysis, but now we're finding that same challenge in microbiome analysis, but it's not only a static sequence, we're testing microbiomes over time. So you continually are adding more and more data to your database. And so how to use that to create products that can benefit health and to look at it sort of longitudinally as well is really going to help define standard microbiome profiles or understand different types of disease types related to the microbiome.
Thank you, Sunny. Bill, I'm sure you have some thoughts you want to share here. Please go ahead.
Yeah, we one of the things that we utilize is we use drones with algorithms to look at fields to see where they're deficient in fertilizers Also cattle with hot spots that could be a precursor to somatic cell or infection in the cattle. Our challenge is how to take that data and provide a faster response to livestock producers, and that's been our bottleneck problem. We're certainly on the edge.
Please continue, Paul. Did you have anything else you wanted to add there?
No. I'm done. Thank you.
Absolutely brilliant. Christian, I know you had some thoughts you wanted to share with our community. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Alysia. I've enjoyed listening to the panelists set the stage, and what I've noticed is prior to the current state of big data prevalence, we had islands of data. And so a given organization or corporation might have a data set that was largely internal to that organization, and the scale of it was limited. But what's changed today is we have things like cloud computing and networks, and we have a lot of new data sources such as everyone's cell phones. And we're collecting more data from those devices that's networked together. And now we have new tools for analyzing that data. And we have more people that have access to the data. So we have more opportunities for entrepreneurs to create new companies based around it. For example, in finance, finding customers that are creditworthy because we are collecting data that we haven't been able to collect before and determine that these customers are eligible for credit. That's an example of something we couldn't do before because data was locked into islands. And I'm looking forward to this discussion very much of some specific examples, which I know we'll be getting to coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Now moving on to a very hot topic, blockchain. This next question goes to you, Mark. Of course, we'd love to hear from our other VIPs. Mark, one of the biggest topics we're all talking about is blockchain. Can you give our listeners a simple conceptual understanding of blockchain? And please do keep in mind that there are people from around the world listening. So good luck. Here goes.
Wow, you saved the easy one for me. So maybe I'll take a less technical answer to blockchain. To me, blockchain is about how you actually apply the concept of trust between two or more entities. And as we look to the future of how consumers and businesses exchange information with each other, up until now there really has been a lack of trust. Big companies acquire data without or aggregate data without consumers really knowing what's going on. Consumers don't provide a specific permission to use data. It's sort of buried in terms of service. What we can now do with blockchain is establish a relationship between consumer and business, business with business, where there's a trust factor in between each of those points of connection that says, I trust the data coming from one entity to another, and that has been properly permissioned from one side or another. So I kind of think of it more from how the connection points fit together, and then ultimately it's to promote trust between entities.
Thank you, Mark. Let's talk about some AI. Satya, you're playing in some very cool stuff. We've been talking about blockchain. We've been talking about the evolution of data. Could you describe some AI machine learning and its role as a tool? Please go ahead.
Yes, I can give you a possible use case scenario. First of all, with regards to, we're now talking about what is called as comprehensive electronic record from. The electronic health record, electronic medical records have evolution from what's called EMR, electronic medical records, electronic health records. Now we're talking about comprehensive health records, wherein all connected, all the devices, subjects the patients would wear, such as glucometer, thermometer, heart, those kind of things, all connected together. And data coming from pharmacy clinics, and various hospitals, primary care physicians, all can be
Satya, I'm so
yeah.
sorry. We're battling to hear you. I'm going to ask Darren to just get you sorted there. Derek, we'd love to hear from you in terms of AI and machine learning and its role as a tool. Would you like to go ahead and share your insights while we just get Satya sorted?
Sure. The biggest thing around AI and machine learning, to ultimately boil it down for the layperson, is it really comes down to just math, right? AI is ultimately really, really fast algorithms and computation that are taking place. And then that allows you to layer the math and the algorithms to kind of come to conclusions faster. And so, for example, in our space, education, we can essentially see the types of content that people are accessing most frequently. And similar to how you consume media content, that material that's being used most frequently or most favorably is elevated to the top. Or on the other side of it, if we can identify that there's a gap in someone's knowledge base, you can essentially distribute content that would help augment that particular skill or deficiency. So essentially, you're using data in a smart manner, if you will, where it's essentially personalizing based on the variables that are being crunched at that same time. So that's one example of how it's being used.
Thank you so much, Derek. I know that Mark had some insights he wanted to share here. Please go ahead, Mark. And then I know Christian had some thoughts he wanted to share with our community.
Thanks. Yeah, one extra point I was going to make on the topic of AI is the way we're starting to see it is around automation. And so the key thing that we see is like take an industry like the restaurant industry here in America, where you have increasing labor rates in an industry that requires a high touch point or high degree of service. And so the economics just don't line up for small restaurants and restaurant chains to keep just adding more staff because they can't afford the staff and all the insurance and all the extra costs. So now what you find is something like the restaurant industry moving towards how do I use technology like AI, artificial intelligence, to actually provide customer service, take orders, and actually other elements that can offset my labor costs and still provide a high degree of customer service and customer touch points. So I think finding sort of the day-to-day use of AI in other industries is incredibly fascinating.
Thank you so much, Mark. And I know Adam had some thoughts he wanted to quickly share before moving on to Christian. Adam, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick point. One application that people might be fairly familiar with for AI is Siri on the Apple iPhone, and that's actually powered by Wolfram Alpha. People might not know that. And that is a computational knowledge engine, which ties back into the idea of layered algorithms, which can sift through vast amounts of data through disparate data sets and come to a, at least hopefully, quasi-intelligent conclusion about what that data means.
Thank you so much. And let's hear from Christian. Christian, please go ahead.
Thank you, Alysia. So building on what was just said, the interesting thing about what we call AI, which is an acronym for artificial intelligence, is it involves algorithms or software programming that use advanced statistics to analyze very, very large data sets. So one of the differences when we're talking about data and AI with AI is that it can analyze larger pools of data than humans ever could analyze on their own and see patterns that we can't see because they defy our typical line of inquiry or intuition. And we can see that maybe there are correlations between people who walk a certain way to work and their health. For example, AI is also a form of software that's used to perform specific tasks, such as navigating a self-driving car. And AI consumes large sets of data in order to learn. So a self-driving car software is always learning based on all the data that all the other cars around it that are self-driving are contributing to it. So it's a very vast way of software learning, and data is the fuel for the learning. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian. Let's talk about industries and business processes. Sunny, we'd love to hear from you first, and then, of course, Mark. Sunny, what industries are you studying from a big data application perspective? Please keep your answer super simple, Sunny.
Well, we're focused on next-gen sequencing, and what that means is there are instrumentations now that sequence DNA and create large data sets off of that sequence. It's an analytical tool or machine used in a laboratory setting that helps us understand what is actually there from the sample input, whether that's human cells, microbial cells. We can analyze things at the DNA level and then output information that then has to be processed again through some sort of bioinformatics or some sort of software to actually get the summary data. So that's one of the big data instrument and systems that we're currently using.
Thank you, Sunny. Mark, we'd love to hear from you here. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I see a few different things. I'm going to throw out a term I was using this week with some friends to describe this, but I feel like we're moving to a world where there's actually medium data, which is, big data is, I think of my old employer like Experian, the big credit bureau that has data on everyone in America. But I think there's more and more data sets that are kind of this medium data where you may have a few million people's worth of data, and your goal is to start to stitch it together with other data sets. And I think that's becoming one of the sort of fascinating challenges is how do I take my data set of, 4 million people or 10 million people's worth of data, which may seem big, but not as obviously as large as other sets, and combine it to tell a story about who is this person, what is their identity, what are they doing, how are they, doing things like making purchases or spending their money or going to see the doctor. And I think the more that we can start to connect the dots between those sort of small to medium points, we start to create truly the big data that's going to be most useful for us over time. Just one other kind of note to that, if I could add, is I think there's this notion of data liquidity. And I think in most industries, especially here in America, we have the ability to have that data move in between entities, except for healthcare. And I think I know a number of folks on the call today have brought that up. I think that's a really important topic to focus on for this year is how do we bring data liquidity into the healthcare arena?
Thank you so much. Fascinating insights being shared here today. Paul, please go ahead, and then we'd love to hear from Sunny.
Yes, we when we look at livestock and organic crops across the world, our industry does a very poor job of communicating data information between, largely because it's somewhat isolated from, say, big urban centers. But data collection is not a commonality. What we are trying to do is to collect the data and develop algorithms to be able to use across the board as a standard formula with some deviation. But our challenge is no different than what was just mentioned about healthcare. We fall into that same situation. We need more liquidity and fluidness of animal health and well-being that's communicated. Today, most of us will eat 3 meals, and most of us don't think about where that comes from. And
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Please continue. Please continue. Did you have anything you wanted to add there?
No, Lisa, just the fact that one of the things we all do each day when we consume energy, that energy actually comes from a very wasteful industry. Raising livestock and organics is actually not very efficient. And so we're trying to put together data set points to provide better efficiency. For instance, if a dairy has 100 head, we don't think much about, well, it's 100 head. But if they can get the same milk production with 50 head, we've made a benefit to the environmental impact by being able to share information across, dairy barns in the world. What someone's doing in India, we need to be doing here, and that doesn't get communicated very well. And that's
Thank
our
you so
data
much. Thank you. And I know Sunny's got some insights he wanted to share here before we move on to asking Satya. Sunny, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Alysia. Yeah, just along the lines of sharing data, not only from large data sets and beginning to share those data sets, we're finding an interesting aspect of personal genomics where people want to know how they compare individually to these large data sets as well. And so having access to those data sets enables them to understand how do they compare. And then another layer is comparing amongst their group and peer group. When they have their health information, they may want to compare and share with one another, and that a little bit creates some awareness for them, kind of a tracking for them compared to their group. It's a really interesting space that's beginning to evolve here in healthcare.
Thank you so much, Sunny. Satya, I know you had some insights in terms of healthcare and life sciences and cool examples of what's going on. Please go ahead and share, Sunny.
Yeah. So with regards to liquidity of big data in healthcare, there are two major hurdles at this stage. Number one is patient privacy and confidentiality, and number two, patient authorization. So if we know the data that we collect, if I want to use it for research or big data analysis, other than for patient care, other than for the treatment, number one, we need to obtain patient authorization to use that data for other than delivery of care. And also, I got to ensure that the patient's identity, confidentiality are not breached. I think a blockchain-based electronic and comprehensive healthcare records can transform this and add liquidity to the healthcare data. In blockchain-based electronic health record, as I understand it, the patient is the one who controls the data delivery or data access. Using in the electronic health record, if it is structured or designed in a proper way, it should be possible to remove all protected health information or the patient privacy part. And once you remove the patient privacy data part, it becomes de-identified, which is not governed by the same rules of patient privacy and confidentiality. And again, because patient will be controlling the access and release of the data through blockchain, they can deposit large amounts of their de-identified data into we call it a data lake. And researchers can harness that as long as the patient authorization is there. Currently, all these data are held in silos and are controlled by healthcare organizations, like the hospitals, pharmacy chains, insurance companies, etc. Even though the data belong to the patients, they do not have any control over it. But they can individually ask all these different organizations, get the data, which usually is delivered in either a paper or a PDF format. The patients do not have any means or tools to analyze them. So I think the blockchain-based electronic health record will transform healthcare by adding liquidity and allowing big data analytics.
Thank you so much, Satya. I know Adam had some thoughts, then Derek had some thoughts, and then, of course, we'd love to hear from Christian. So, Adam, please go ahead.
Sure. I'd like to add an example from my own industry, which is working with concrete and putting nanotubes into concrete. It's actually possible adding carbon nanotubes into concrete in the right concentration will make it conductive. And by running a low-level electrical signal through a structure built with this material, you can kind of monitor what's going on in the environment. So say you have a bridge and there's some kind of storm surge or something, and it's undergoing some kind of extra stress that it doesn't usually undergo. That will actually change the electrical resistance in certain portions of the structure, and that can be measured with sensors embedded in the concrete. So there could be a lot of data in the future simply coming from the environment. Things that we kind of view as being dead right now that don't give us any data will actually light up in the future and possibly prevent calamity.
Thank you so much, Adam. Derek, please go ahead.
Yeah, back to healthcare for a moment and kind of piggybacking on Satya's and Sunny's comments. I think the opportunity for liquidity and data for healthcare is around this role of the individual, right? The fact we're going about personalization in every way. And the fact that companies like 23andMe and these other genomics companies, and not only that, but just kind concierge health clinics where they're mapping to Sonny's point, they're mapping your biome, they're mapping your genetic code, they're collecting data every year on your health records, and they're storing that. And you're, as an individual, granting permission to do that. You're finding alternative health models that are coming into the market that are truly alternatives to the traditional health systems that Sonny was talking about, hospital systems, payers, pharmacy chains. And there is an opportunity to integrate those through potentially blockchain, but otherwise, just the role in general that the individual has on being the CEO of their health, as a friend of mine calls it, is massive. And so you're going to see that trend continue to increase, where the individual will choose to participate and have their data inserted into the data lake, as you call it, because they will get more value of their own health and their own lifestyle by sharing that data in return. There's a fair trade that's taking place or will take place.
Thank you so much, Derek. I know Christian had some insights he wanted to share here. Please go ahead. And then we're going to be asking Mark for his thoughts. Please go ahead, Christian.
Thank you, Alysia. I've been listening intently and just wanted to recap the landscape that our panelists have been covering. So we started out talking about the importance of integrating different data sets to draw new types of insights. And a number of panelists have commented that, well, there are challenges to this. This is a great idea conceptually, but maybe we don't have the logistical ability to share data in industries such as agriculture, or maybe in industries such as healthcare, because of legal and regulatory requirements, we're not able to share data. So for the entrepreneurs listening to the show, if you're building a business, you not only have to be able to address the technical issues with building large data sets in certain industries such as healthcare and government, you have to be able to address the legal and regulatory aspects of pulling data together, if that's what your startup idea hinges on. And this also creates opportunities for entrepreneurs. The people that are able to do that can create valuable companies. And a number of panelists have mentioned blockchain. Just to step back, blockchain is a way of storing large amounts of data across many computers in a way that allows open access to the data, but still offers rules for governing the data so everyone can trust it. And it still offers ways to secure the data. So this may be a way to break through some of those integration challenges. And a lot of entrepreneurs are now looking at industries and how they can put valuable records onto blockchain technology so that more and more businesses can create it and more people can benefit. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Christian. Mark, we'd love to hear from you in terms of cool examples within the finance and insurance space. And I know you had some other thoughts you'd like to share with our community. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, that was the point I was going to actually bring up, is I think there's actually a really interesting connection that's starting to be made between what people call health and wealth. So while we're talking a lot today about data liquidity for healthcare, the financial services space has had that notion for many years. There used to be an app, many of us may recall, called Mint, which was the first third-party non-bank application where a consumer could see all of their finances in one place and get all these great recommendations for how to better manage their money. I think the time is right now for us to bring the Mint kind of concept into healthcare, but also link your healthcare data with your financial data so that you can get sort of that real 360 point of view on how your health affects your spending, how your spending affects your health, and ultimately, how can you be saving for the future of your expenses that are naturally going to be incurred down the road, primarily from healthcare? So just one final point, healthcare, especially in the United States, is moving to a model that's more consumerized, meaning the consumer is bearing a larger piece of the burden or the cost of healthcare, and we're starting to move away from employer-sponsored healthcare. data is going to become the key element that makes that industry work and flow and be able to truly help consumers save for their future healthcare needs.
Thank you so much. And I know Sunny had some thoughts he wanted to share here. Please go ahead, Sunny.
Yeah, I just wanted to share some of my experiences in trying to get access to public data sets. One of the things we want to be able to do is give that access to consumers so they can see how they compare to larger data sets. And one example in our industry is the Human Microbiome Project. And so when we submitted to that regulatory agency to review our access to their data, it was a 30-page security protocol submission on what we do to secure private data. And it took 2 months of process to get access to that data and eventually then begin to interpret that information to provide some comparable to individuals testing their microbiome. So that process, we learned that there is a lot of security protocols already in existence around securing data, but I think one of the challenges is making it seamless. It's not like a Dropbox integration. It's not at that seamless level. You do have to put a lot of deliberate thought and processes in place, and of course documentation.
Thank you, Sunny. And moving on, Derek, I know you had some thoughts in terms of cool examples within the communications, media, and culture space. Please go ahead.
Well, I think just to speak on that, so look at media. The concept of retargeting is a perfect example of how consumers' data is being utilized, right? So if you go to a website, choose Expedia, for example, or you go on and look at travel, and you're looking at a trip and you find something there, and then you go to a website. This is the most common example. You see an ad for that trip that you were just looking at a moment ago on a news page, where you went to Amazon Prime and you were looking at buying something. The next thing you know, you find it on somewhere else. So the point is that the data is following you. That's from the standpoint of media and consumer behaviors. I think that is just an example of the everyday person, how they see it applying in their life. The same thing with even just simple things like traffic. You think 10 years ago when we had GPSs and we had a route, over the last decade, we've been collecting data on those routes, and now we're getting down to the minute, being able to track traffic patterns and different things like that to improve your life, and you can plan your day more effectively. So I think just the way that the world is evolving, that data is improving our day-to-day lives, that's really what makes it exciting, and why you're seeing more and more people choose and self-enroll, so to speak, in how they are participating with their data. And that the more people that opt in, the more there will be, it multiplies the exponential effect that you have around more and more data being added into the system and into the math equation, if you will, allows more and more of an output.
Thank you so much, Derek. And Bo, we'd love to hear from you in terms of cool examples within the manufacturing, consumers, products, and retail space. Please go ahead. We seem to have lost Bo there. Adam, we'd love for you to touch on the government and security side. Are there any cool examples you can think of that you can share with us?
Yeah, I would say one of the main applications that I see being put out is behavioral prediction. And it's a little bit concerning for civil liberties, but let's say that you had a database of someone's credit history, or a lot of people's credit history, and you tie that in with educational records and maybe arrest records, and you can start to build a very detailed picture with algorithms of someone's probable behavioral profile. And so China is actually fairly big into that. They've also, China recently in Beijing, they're tying into their CCTV network facial recognition technology on a mass scale. That's a very, very large big data application, and it's been quite successful, actually.
Thank you so much. And now we'd love to hear from Christian. Christian, please go ahead.
Well, what I found interesting about this part of the conversation is we started to talk about how we're living with the benefits of big data today. And we can see things about our finances and spending patterns that we couldn't see before, because we're able to pull together data about our own spending behavior. And then we can create a budget, for example. And companies have created valuable businesses based on that simple concept. So we're using it in our lives today, and entrepreneurs are creating valuable businesses And another example of how we all benefit from the use of data and new tools such as AI is when we buy something online. There's a whole chain of information, beginning with information about our preferences. When we go to a website like Amazon.com, we're shown certain things. That increases the likelihood we'll find something that we want to buy. And this all uses very big volumes of data. And then when we buy it, we're able to get it quickly because there's coordination between our purchase and the warehouses that store that item and the transportation networks that deliver that item. And all of this runs on vast amounts of data that is collected and networked together and then analyzed effectively. And so this can seem like a theoretical thing, but we all go through our lives using big data and the tools to improve our personal lives and our business lives today. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Moving on to our next question. This is for all entrepreneurs listening today. We'd love to hear from you, Satya, then Sunny, and then I know Derek's got some insights he also wants to share. Satya, the question goes as follows. When it comes to data, what are some opportunities available for entrepreneurs in this space? Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I can talk about electronic health records for ours. So electronic health records in the US have been implemented since 2009 following a federal law called as HITECH Act. It's a disruptive technology. There's a lot of good things, such as, you can access data records from anywhere. However, the downside of the electronic health records is it has brought down the productivity of the physicians and hospitals significantly, to the extent that some of the hospitals actually are running record losses. That also poses an opportunity. As physicians, when they're managing complex medical cases with patients with multiple chronic diseases or multiple medical problems, we have to deal with massive amounts of data. The X-rays, the labs, the history records from various sources, etc. And we only have about 30-40 seconds before you can actually review all of them before you go and see a patient in your office visit. Here, the big data analytics, or the data analytics that is personalized to the patient, if we can develop something called a virtual intern. That's what I'm trying to develop. Physicians in like teaching hospitals like mine have a set of doctors, senior doctors called as interns or residents. They dig through the patient's chart beforehand, synthesize the information, create a summary, and present that data to the attending physician before going and see the patient. So virtual intern, an algorithm can do this much more efficiently and accurately. So that if I'm a pulmonologist, I'm a patient.
I'm so sorry, everyone. We keep losing Satya. Satya, unfortunately, we keep losing you. We're finding it difficult to hear you. Just bear with us. Sunny, we'd love to hear from you. Sunny, please go ahead.
Sure. It's an amazing time for sure in data science. And we know that, in the information age, it was all about this collection of data. And I like to think that we're coming to sort of an end or a crossroads now where information is not enough. We need actionable information. We need to know how to utilize that data into a true intervention or a change, whatever that may be. So scientists that are able to analyze information that's already existing, I mean, we've been spending the last 10 years collecting these massive data sets. And a lot of times we were collecting this information not really knowing how we were going to utilize it in the future. And so now is the time to begin to dive into that. And as an entrepreneur, there's a world of opportunity to figure out the different actionable things that you can create off of this either health or personal information to really benefit people, society, or healthcare.
Thank you so much, Sunny. And I know Derek's got some thoughts he wants to share here. So does Mark and so does Adam. So Derek, you go first, please.
Yeah, so just on the topic of China and the facial recognition component and how that applies to consumers again. So, I mean, my understanding that the Chinese government now essentially can identify their citizens in under a minute based on their facial recognition, the project that they've done. So on the level of imagine taking that to the US or other emerging markets, wherever it is, where you now have retail, right? And this concept has been shared a lot. But imagine you walk into a store, your face has been recognized, and all of a sudden the entire profile of all that data that you've allowed and given permission to be used starts popping up, and you start getting essentially push notifications like you do on your phone, but you're getting them to your glasses or to screens that are being set up, in the store that are notifying you of certain sales that are made available on certain goods that you would like to buy, or just dialing back in for a variety of reasons. Your face has become potentially, even with the phone now, your face is becoming the identifier by which you're unlocking or locking different data sets. The fact that that is now becoming a reality opens up a whole other window to Sunny's point around what is possible, and just data sets that have been latent are now being utilized and activated in such a way that we've never had access to before. So the opportunity for entrepreneurs to build businesses around use cases like that is endless.
Thank you so much, Derek. Mark, you go ahead.
Yeah, so what I wanted to just add to this is I think there's still a discrepancy between how data is collected sort of with or without the consumer. And, so yeah, me walking around on a public street, yes, I understand that data is being collected about me or pictures being taken about me. But I think in general, most consumers don't realize how much data is actually being collected on them. I go back to the credit bureau type of model. When you signed up for your credit card at Citibank, you didn't realize that all of your financial information was going to be truly sent over to this other third party that was going to sort of run models against it, do a bunch of things with it without a lot of transparency. And I think what we're starting to see is more of a shift towards what I call consumer permission data, where the consumer has more direct knowledge of the fact that they are, yes, in fact, sharing their data. They know what data they're sharing with someone, and they know where it's coming from, and they have an opportunity to do something with it. In America, we're starting to see that come into play in the form of with mortgages. When you apply for a mortgage for your home, you can now start to share what job and employer you work for by giving permission to the HR system that actually confirms that you're an employee of a company, or to your bank where you have checking and savings data to confirm balances in those accounts. So I can be aware of what information is being shared with another entity that's going to be making a decision on whether I get a loan or not. And I think that transparency of that data sharing and data exchange ultimately creates new value and opportunity for both the business and, in this case, for the consumer, who can see that, wow, I do have money in my bank account and I can afford this loan. And now I actually get credit for that. So I think the shift in the paradigm is more towards consumer transparency and consumer directly permissioning their data access.
Thank you so much, Mark. And Adam, I know you had some thoughts you wanted to share here. Please go ahead.
Yeah, to Derek's example that he mentioned about walking into a store and having your face scanned and then targeted advertising sent to you, I believe that was already anticipated by the movie Minority Report. There's a scene where Tom Cruise walks into a store and he's trying to evade the police, I think, and they scan his eyeballs from a distance, and that exact thing happens. So people might want to check that out. Back to the original point, when it comes to opportunities for entrepreneurs, I think offering big data solutions to small and medium-sized enterprises is important. And it was mentioned before that medium data is in many ways an untapped opportunity. Big companies don't really have a problem analyzing, storing, and processing big data because they're already big. But many smaller businesses don't have the knowledge base or expertise to handle that data in-house. So a third-party solution might be quite useful. So I could see quite a bit of money being made there in the future.
Thank you, Adam. Sunny, the next question is for you. You're working in the space. You're a fast-growing startup. What mistakes do you see being made, and how can entrepreneurs avoid them when it comes to succeeding ultimately in the space? Please go ahead, Sunny.
Yeah, good question, Alysia. I mean, of course, we understand as a startup that we will make mistakes, and there's a level of just learning from those mistakes and being lean about it and honest with your team and driving through those. Some of the things that we encounter are we building the right product for the customer, right? We as scientists sometimes have so much technical and love for what we're doing that we want to create this exceptional product and spend all the time in development only to get to the consumer and find that it's not actually benefiting them in the way they anticipate. And so the way we manage and mitigate that is to release things in phases and to continue to expand on what the offering is so that we can engage them quickly and get feedback loops going with the product development cycle. And so right now we'd love to continue that cycle as our product development grows, but over time you become big enough where it's hard to get that connection back to your consumer. And so understanding how you can still do that at a large scale is going to be an interesting challenge for us.
Thank you, Sunny. I know Christian wanted to just add some thoughts for our community. Christian, please go ahead before we move on to our investor section of the show.
Certainly. Thank you, Alysia. Well, we've been talking about the opportunities and challenges that entrepreneurs face when using big data and the new tools that exist. And a few things stand out from the conversation. One is very simply, people who are data experts have many opportunities to either go into business or create businesses. And if you're doing that as an entrepreneur, one of the things to look for is, does your business, let's say you're creating a new insurance company, new transportation company, or a new retail company, is there a way for you to create a novel or proprietary data set that can enhance your product and service and give you a competitive advantage? So looking at data as an element of your business strategy, that's another one. Then you can improve your internal processes. You can better understand your customers from a marketing and sales point of view. That should be part of your plan. And as the panelists were commenting, we can also serve customers who might not have had the advantages of using big data. So individual consumers who would like to learn about their financial situations or health, or small businesses that may not have had the resources that large corporations traditionally have had. There are businesses being built around bringing things that large corporations traditionally use to customer segments that haven't had access to those resources. Those are some of the opportunities, but some of the challenges are entrepreneurs always need to be certain that they can actually do this, both technically and legally, and from a timing perspective. And we often see companies attempting to start by doing too much. And at the same time, entrepreneurs need to be mindful of the legal and privacy concerns that their customers may have, because they have to protect themselves in those realms, but also they have to protect their brand. And this is something that investors will be looking for. Not only are entrepreneurs harnessing the opportunities that data presents, but are they planning in a mindful way so they can have a well-governed, well-executed business? Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. And our next question goes to Mark and Derek, but of course, we'd love to hear from our other guests as well. Mark, we'd love to hear from you in terms of how investors are participating in this space. We'd love for you to cover the general investing climate, what investors are looking for, and of course, if there are any gaps in the investing ecosystem. Mark, feel free to go ahead. And then, of course, Derek, we'd love to hear from you. Please go ahead, Mark.
Sure, absolutely. I'll cover this in two ways. One is, I think investors are looking at, I'll call them SaaS businesses, because there seems to be a tremendous crop of businesses, mostly are SaaS, that use the phrase, we have so much data, it's going to be so valuable. And I think in what investors are really trying to do right now is sort through that to help the entrepreneur who really is focused on more of a software business, who may have accumulated data through that business, try to sort through to find the real value, if any, in the data set that they've collected. And I think that becomes a real challenge. People who develop software products for a living it's a dramatic different business model than people who know how to sell data for a living. It's definitely extremes. So I think that's one key point is understanding how data sets that have been collected can be, in essence, effectively monetized, if at all. Most fall into the non-monetizable sense. The other thing I was going to say is the other thing investors are looking at are just simply unique data sets. And I'll go back to the comment around medium data sets. So the opportunity to create an experience-sized data set of everyone in the country is extremely difficult and probably not realistic. But if you can harness, let's say 5 million or 10 million people's worth of data where you have direct permissions around that and there's transparency and privacy rights and stuff maintained, and you can start to link that data set into sort of the greater ecosystem of data sets, whether it's connecting through an Experian or an Axiom or other providers, so that you can fill in the gaps in a story about a consumer's life or journey. There's real value there. And so it starts with how the data is being collected. What are the permissions that people have around that? Can the data be, in essence, appended or linked to other data sets? And then ultimately, how do you create the value out of those individual elements of data that you're bringing to the table?
Thank you, Mark. Derek, would love to hear from you here too. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so 3 things. So first is I'm completely in agreement with Mark and his points. I think that on the whole of investing and the whole of companies in this space, we're super early on the curve of how data is being monetized. And as a SaaS business owner and investor myself, I think we're going to start seeing the shift from software as a service to what I'm calling data as a service, or DaaS companies. And you're going to see companies that are truly using the data to drive impact on business or lifestyle or outcomes or whatever the industry is. We're using it. That's the first shift. The second thing, as far as investment is concerned and companies are concerned, is that you're seeing a huge shift towards, as things are being demonetized around data, social capitalism, social impact, public benefit corporations, and social just good companies that are looking to use this data to create opportunities and advance humanity in terms of how we acquire information, how we process information, how we take care of our health, how we take care of our wealth, how we take care of our children, how we take care of our planet. And I think that the data transformation and renaissance that's about to take place is going to accelerate the trajectory of what we can do on a massive scale. And I think that's really you hear about this concept of moonshots. That's what will come next for investors as they look at companies that are really, really using data in a meaningful way and also creating, a lasting legacy from that data set.
Thank you so much, Derek. Our next question is for Adam. I know he's got some thoughts on this current question as well. Adam, are you seeing any global hotspots of investment activity? And please tell us more. Please go for it.
Okay, I guess I'll answer your first question, then I'll get back to the former. So in Canada here, the government of Ontario has just recently put forward $75 million to support big data in the public and private sector. And University of Toronto has announced that it's launching a massive project to sequence the whole genomes of 10,000 people per year. And I believe they started that back in 2016. So they should have quite a few completed by now. And that's positioning Toronto as a global leader in the race to understand complex disease, particularly by analyzing large data sets. And one point I wanted to make about the former question, I don't think it's known what data architecture is more efficient for big data right now. Is it better to have centralized systems, or is it better to have something more blockchain based that's decentralized? I think the free market will work that out in time, and it'll be exciting to find out.
Thank you so much. Moving on to our next question. We'd love to hear from you, Sunny. You're raising funding, a lot of startups raising funding. Could you give some thought to and share with us what you'd recommend to investors looking to invest in the space? Please go ahead, Sunny.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I typically ask that question of the investors we speak with. So maybe from my perspective, as we see so many microbiome companies begin to have a position in this space, what I find interesting is changing the paradigm of not just collecting data. Don't just be a company to create something to collect more data. Be a company that is going to utilize data for an action to improve something. And in our case, the action is a probiotic, but there's so many other actions that we can leverage from this information and find that the actions that are more reasonable from a human behavior standpoint. When we look at things that have been successful, 23andMe, when they launched, one of the largest challenges, not just getting customers, but then one of the largest challenges was, okay, we've given this data to the customers. What did our customers do with that data? And that's the most informative thing for us, is to kind of understand what are our customers doing with the information. And if they're not making changes to their healthcare or their lifestyle off the information, then there's a disconnect. And that's what we wanted to focus on. And that's what I would encourage investors to look at when looking at competitive spaces is, are their customers actually getting the benefit that's described from the asset of the data?
Thank you so much, Sunny. And I know Christian's got some insights he wants to share with regard to investing. Please go ahead, Christian.
Yes, from an investor perspective, as the panelists have said, we believe that the market opportunity will only continue to expand with respect to businesses built around data. And that's because new technologies, as well as the cost of applying those technologies in areas such as DNA analysis, are creating an ever increasing pool of data sets for entrepreneurs to work with in areas such as health, which is the example Sunny's been using. But investors are going to be looking for entrepreneurs that are applying their use of data in specific ways that actually creates business value. And I've seen companies, very promising companies, that have been pulling together data, say, from satellites. And the biggest problem with their business is not whether the data is valuable, but where do they start? Who do they sell to first? And in some cases, the challenge in solving that question has hurt the business, sometimes materially. So investors are going to be looking for data investing opportunities in startups where the startups actually have a plan that seems realistic. And on another note, investors are using data themselves to analyze the investment opportunities that they're seeing. And I think that'll be an increasing trend. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Moving on to our next question. We'd love to hear from you, Adam. And then, of course, Satya, we'd love to hear from you. Talking about governments and data, Adam, you're based in Canada. Can you comment on what you're seeing both in Canada and globally with regard to government's involvement? Are there any countries that have advantages when it comes to this space? And could you give any advice to government ministers and that listening to today's show? Please go ahead, Adam, and then we'd love to hear from you, Satya.
Okay, well, as I mentioned before, in Canada here, the government's rather interested in promoting big data, and they put forward some monies. Estonia is another interesting country, one of the former bloc states. Now, they've really gone towards a digital model in their country, and they actually have what's called like a digital citizenship. And so anyone from around the world can have like a virtual citizenship. It doesn't mean that you can have residency in that country, but you can open a business and you can be under their tax structure in that country. So anyone from around the world, that's a lot of data. I mean, theoretically, anyone could become a virtual citizen of Estonia and open a business and conduct there. So that's a model that might be followed. They also instituted a flat tax, interestingly enough, which has really helped to spawn innovation in that country. And a personal example, I have what's called a smart garden, a click and grow. And that's the kind of thing where it's a little box and it has some LEDs and it automatically grows plants and it monitors them. It's really neat. I'm growing basil right now in my kitchen. But it's the kind of startup that you would think would happen out of San Francisco, Silicon Valley. But it's actually coming from Estonia. And I found that very interesting. So there's a lot we can learn from a little country like Estonia.
Thank you so much, Adam. Satya, I know we had some thoughts you wanted to share with us. Please go ahead.
Yeah. In healthcare, I can think of two areas where there's opportunity for entrepreneurship. One is in data creation, and the other one is data utilization. In the field of data creation, the most of the data analysis so far have looked at administrative data. There is something called clinical data. This involves what the doctors and nurses are thinking about, what the thought process. So there are a lot of concerns about accuracy, cleanliness of data there, and there is an opportunity to improve that data creation. In the data utilization, there's a lot of opportunities for chronic disease management, and what I would like to call is a virtual clinical trial, where pharma companies spend a lot of money running clinical trials, but the big data analysis, especially over a long period of time, personalized education offers an opportunity to run what is called a virtual clinical trial, which is very costly.
Thank you so much, Satya. Unfortunately, we're having issues hearing you, but we're very happy to learn from you. Now we're moving on to our famous section in the show. We ask our VIP guests, what industries do you believe are ripe for disruption in 2018, and what excites you the most? We're going to start with Derek. Tell us the first answer that comes to mind. That's always the most fun part for our community. So, Derek, what excites you in 2018, and what industries are ripe for disruption? Please go for it.
Healthcare has been the industry we've been talking about. I think that is still the industry that is most ripe for disruption. I think the work that's being done now with CRISPR-Cas9 and other genetic diagnostics and treatments, and the data we're collecting on how all this is being used, and the fact that we talked about earlier, consumers opting in to sharing their data, and people really looking around policy to break down the barriers that exist for now. I just think that that's and the fact that the generational shift, especially in the U.S., is moving towards an elderly population. There's a lot of variables and factors that are playing into why I think 2018 to 2020 will be hugely transformational.
Thank you, Derek. Mark, what excites you in 2018? What industries are ripe for disruption?
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to piggyback on the healthcare comment, but a different angle on it is more healthcare from a financial point of view. So instead of just looking at clinical data, looking at how people pay for their healthcare expenses and how that's going to be increasing over time, and how you marry that type of data with people's traditional set of finances to help them plan for the future.
Thank you so much. Adam, please go ahead.
Okay, I don't want to repeat what the other guest said, so I'll pick another sector. I think farming is actually very exciting in 2018. We have drones, self-driving tractors, GPS guidance, analysis of field data, which is very interesting, the gathering of lots of field data. That allows for precision application. I think Bill said that before, fertilizer. And also precision application of seed, which is very important because seeds can be very expensive. So if you have a depression in your field and there's maybe not enough nitrogen, you can plant a little bit more, but a little bit less seed depending on the variety, and make sure that you're going to get the yields that you need out of that. So that's exciting.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. Zani, we'd love to hear from you here. Please go ahead.
I'm really excited for gut science. Of course, it's the field we're in, but there's a famous quote by Hippocrates in the beginning of medicine, where he said all disease begins in the gut. And I think it's finally time where we can begin to understand that through technology like next-gen sequencing and DNA sequencing. I think the food industry is ready for a disruption. I think we're now understanding what are the things that are going into foods. I did an analysis between the word microbiome versus the Twinkie, and the microbiome is now beating the Twinkie. So I'm optimistic in 2018.
Thank you, Sunny. Satya, I hope we can hear you. Please go ahead. Just please keep your answer short.
Yeah. Harnessing data from electronic health records is what keeps me exciting in 2018.
We heard you. Thank you very much, Satya. Christian, what excites you and what's ripe for disruption?
I'm really excited about using data to create more financial access for people around the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. Now, while we ask our VIPs to prepare their tweet piece of advice that we can also become big data geniuses just like them, I'm just going to let you know about our upcoming sessions. Got some very cool sessions planned. On February 21st, we have sensory enhancements and human augmentation for health, work, experience, performance, and more. And then on February 28th, we have a very cool one, payments, transactions, and the foundations of commerce. They are critical to our lives. A look at technology and these foundations. Thank you to everyone for an amazing session today, and thank you to our VIP guests for joining us. Do keep us up to date on all the progress. We do love hearing from you. You can always email us at inspireme@onlinefiresidechat.com. You can find me as well as our VIPs on LinkedIn. Don't forget, we're trying to reach our 100-country goal, and with your help, we know we can make it happen. Now, let's ask our VIPs to quickly share their tweet piece of advice, starting with Derek. Derek, please go ahead.
Data is the fundamental aspect to your personal life and will inform everything that you do in your day-to-day business and otherwise existence moving forward in the 21st century.
Thank you. Sunny, your tweet piece of advice?
Take control of your health and health information and begin to utilize that in the ways that improve your lifestyle.
Thank you, Sunny. Adam, your tweet piece of advice?
Okay, I'll say most unsorted data is not useful. Be selective.
Great advice. Mark, your tweet piece of advice?
Stay focused on consumer permission data. You're in control.
Thank you. Satya, I hope we can hear you. Your tweet piece of advice?
Saving lives with data-driven healthcare.
Thank you. Said by a true doctor. Christian, your tweet piece of advice?
When using big data in your business, remember ethics and good governance.
My pleasure, and thank you to you. Thank you to everyone for an amazing session. My tweet piece of advice is remember to be grateful for everything you have. It's a privilege to be entrepreneurs and to be building our dreams. It's also a privilege to learn from extraordinary business leaders, such as the ones that have joined us today. Thank you to the man behind the scenes, Darren, for producing and leading our tech for today. To everybody, we are sorry we've been having connectivity issues, but thank you for standing by us. We hope to see you next week on the count of 3. We're going to ask our VIPs to shout bye. So thank you again to everyone. Remember to never give up and keep hustling. Until next week. 1, 2, 3. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.